Hi, it's Cassandra Shear again, and as promised, I'm here today to read you the first couple chapters of my debut novel, The Stone Doorway. After I'm done, I'll make sure you guys have all the links and everything to purchase the book. It is available on Amazon, Goodreads, through my website, beyondthedragonflies.com, and my publisher's website, Line by Lion Publications. But I'll make sure all that is in the description below. And if you want to hear more and how it ends, then go out and buy it. So it's kind of a gloomy day here, so it's kind of a perfect day to sit back and read a book. So I hope you enjoy it. And we'll get started. Chapter 1. On the day that Tori McKenna's life became surprisingly unordinary, she had observed how painfully normal she had let her existence become, a thought she would later regret. It started off in its normal, simple fashion, eating breakfast in the kitchen alone while panicked about the day ahead. She walked to school alone, threatened by the very glance of other classmates. School dragged by in its ordinary fashion, with Tori silently existing in the back rows of classrooms and making herself as small as possible in the hallways, bleeding right into track practice. This, for Tori, was the best part of her day. The slap of her sneakers against the surface of the track, the wind blowing her chestnut hair, and the warm sun beating down on her bare shoulders, melted away the stress and panic of the day, and made her feel more alive than she had in 2 years. The sensation always died away too quickly afterward, but she came back every day to get a taste of what living actually felt like. On this particular day, her walk home veered off from normalcy when she heard the horn beep and the annoying shave and a haircut, 2 bits rhythm. Her blood chilled, and as she turned and saw the late 80s Chevy, souped up beyond belief, the details to which were burned into her memory. Her heart rate quickened, and she felt the familiar fear of the driver rising up, threatening to strangle her. "What do you want?" She wouldn't look directly at him through the open passenger window. She couldn't. "You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me." She tried so hard to sound firm, but she could hear the tremble in her voice. "Not as of 8 this morning," Beau Shaw smiled at her across the cab of the truck. He was unquestionably handsome, standing 6'1" with short strawberry blonde patch atop his head. He was a catch to some, not to mention he could easily bench press 2 of Tori. These were many of the reasons Tori had swooned when he passed her in the hallways of school, and had squealed with delight when they had started dating each other sophomore year. They had been the all-American, picture-perfect couple. She had been the envy of every girl. Their eyes had followed her down every hallway. She remembered feeling pride at the jealousy she managed to elicit from other girls. That is, until Beau's anger and fists emerged. The first 2 times he hit her, she hid it from everyone with makeup and lame excuses. He would apologize with beautiful and extravagant flower arrangements. He would pamper her for weeks, and eventually, the memory of the injury would fade. The 3rd time, she was unable to hide it, ending not only their relationship, but also his football scholarship to college, something for which he placed the blame solely on Tori. Since the restraining order, he'd stayed away. Until today. "Let me give you a ride home." "What? No, go away." Tori turned and continued her walk down the sidewalk, watching the blue truck roll alongside her in her peripheral. After a few feet, she turned to face him. "What?" "Come on," he coaxed. "Take a ride with me, baby." He put the truck in park, but before Beau could lift the lever to open his door, Tori turned and bolted down the sidewalk, heart hammering in her chest. From behind her, she heard the door squeak open and slam shut again as Beau gave chase. His footfalls were loud and coming at an incredible speed. Tori's panic was working against her. He was catching her fast. She rounded the corner at the end of the block, cutting across a neatly manicured lawn with Beau only steps behind her. She dared a glance over her shoulder to see how close he was when a lip in the sidewalk grabbed her toe. She tried to correct herself, but her purse strap tangled around her forearm, inhibiting her from righting herself, and down she went. Pain rocketed through her wrist like an explosion, and she felt the skin tear away from her knee. She turned over desperately, pawing through her purse for her pepper spray. Beau laughed. Red-faced and winded, he still found humor in her attempts at courage. "Oh, so now you want to get brave? Pathetic little girl." With his full momentum behind him, he balled his fist and punched Tori, knocking her backward onto the sidewalk. Stars danced in her vision. She lifted her head from the sidewalk, trying desperately to remain conscious as Beau towered over her. Before Tori could put her hand up to block the next blow, a blur came from her right, and suddenly Bo was gone. Tori looked around confused, head bobbing and weaving, vision still blurry, trying to figure out what had just happened. Tori, get it together. She shook her head and then rose to her hands and knees, which hurt, but the tussle taking place on the beautifully manicured lawn to her left made her forget the pain. Bo and a black-haired boy were rolling around on the grass, and although the dark-haired boy was quite a bit smaller, he was quick and rapidly getting the best of Bo. The dark-haired boy threw himself on top of Bo's chest and pinned his arms to the ground on either side of his head. "Enough!" the dark boy yelled. "We're done!" Bo struggled for a minute, then settled, giving in. "For now, pretty boy," Bo rasps. The dark-haired boy rose from the grass, leaving Bo to his defeat. "Hey, it's okay. Are you all right?" The dark-haired boy, barely panting, reached his hand down to Tori. His voice was sweet, and he didn't seem to be mocking her like Bo used to after he'd hit her. He was helping her. She took his hand and gingerly stood, a little dizzy, but it passed quickly, and she regained her composure. She finally looked the boy in the face, and he was, well, gorgeous. He had jet black hair that fell above his ears and olive skin, but his eyes, oh my God, his eyes are beautiful, she thought. His emerald eyes were perfectly framed by long black lashes that made them look even more like gemstones. Tori looked away self-consciously. I need to call the cops," she said shakily. "Okay, I'll find a phone." The nice old lady on whose sidewalk Tori had tripped allowed them to call the police, who were all too happy to drag Bo to jail. Gorgeous eyes never left her side. After the cops left and the street quieted again, Tori grew anxious and broke the silence. "Thank you for stepping in. You really didn't have to." She sounded so small. "You don't need to thank me. You were in trouble. I just happened to come by at the right time." He paused. "I'm Dean, by the way." "I'm Tori." She shook his hand awkwardly. She noticed a spot of blood near the corner of his mouth. Without thinking, she reached up and wiped the blood away with her sleeve. She immediately blushed. He smiled. Nice smile, too, she thought. "Is that short for something?" "Well, Victoria, but everybody calls me Tori." She smiled at him again. "Well, thank you again, but I need to get home." Tori turned to continue down the sidewalk when Dean stopped her. "Hey, wait, let me give you a ride." He gestured to the newer black Trailblazer parked haphazardly on the side of the road. "I'm heading that way anyways. Besides, look at your knee." Tori looked down. It did look a little nasty, but still she hesitated. She didn't know this boy at all, and after what had just happened, she didn't know she should be accepting rides from dark-haired strangers, no matter how attractive. Dean sensed her hesitation. "You can stay unbuckled with the door open. Anything creepy happens, you can bail anytime." Tori smiled at this and nodded in acceptance. "All right, thank you again." They drove in silence for a few blocks to Tori's house, the air thick with questions Tori wanted to ask him. Dean pulled into Tori's driveway, and neither moved or said anything for a moment. "So, who was that guy?" Dean finally asked. He's my psycho ex-boyfriend." Tori held her wrist and looked down at her bloodied knee. "It's so embarrassing." Tori put her face in her hands. "No! Hey, listen to me." Dean gently took her chin and turned her head towards him. "You have nothing to be embarrassed about. That dude is crazy. At least you were smart enough not to get in the car with him." He took his hand away and looked out the window. Some girls aren't so lucky. Tori didn't say anything but waited for him to continue. "My sister Danielle dated lowlife like that. One day, he picked her up for a date, and she never came home. You were smart, Tori." "I'm so sorry, Dean." Tori reached across the center console and took his hand. His skin was warm against hers. He smiled appreciatively. "It's okay, thanks. We moved right down the road there." He pointed down the block. "New start or something. Anyway, just my parents and I now." Tori smiled. I should go. "Thank you again." She reached down absentmindedly to gather her things, and she realized they weren't there. She dropped her face in her hands. "Oh my God. I left my bag down the street." Tori leaned back in the seat and sighed. I'm gonna walk back down and get my bag. "Thank you again for everything." She opened the car door and hopped out. "Well, wait a second," Dean called after her. "I'll go get it." Tori stared at him in astonishment. Really? Yeah, your leg's all tore up. I'll go get it and bring it back. No, seriously, you don't have to do that. You've already done more than enough, really. What kind of knight in shining armor would I be if I made you walk 3 blocks with swollen wrists and scraped up knee to get your bag? He flashed that perfect smile at her, making her melt from the inside out. Go inside, clean up that knee, and I'll be back in a sec. He put the car in reverse and pulled back down her short driveway before she could protest. The stark contrast between how nice he was and how cruel Bo was startled her. He was too good to be true. Tori watched the trailblazer head back down the street, then gingerly walked up the sidewalk to her front door. She dug the hidden key out from the potted plant to the side of the door and let herself into the empty house. Her mother was out of town again for some conference or another, and the quiet seemed to almost echo off the walls at her. She hated the silence of her empty house. After flipping on the radio near the window, she fell into one of the armchairs. The lace curtains hanging over the side windows filtered in the afternoon light, casting a warm glow over the room. The light danced off the pictures on the opposite wall. Embarrassing pictures of Tori dating back to preschool filled the wall, but there were none that she was truly smiling in. Not a single picture in her house that captured her being truly happy. The rest of her house was quaint, filled with whitewashed country tables, doilies, and tabletop knickknacks. The hardwood floors gleamed in the sunlight from around the several neatly placed throw rugs throughout the room. The stairs to her left ascended to the 3 bedrooms and large bathroom. Ahead of her, the living room opened up into a large kitchen with a door that opened up into a small, unkept backyard, and another that led to a small bathroom. Tori stood and headed to the small bathroom to retrieve the first aid kit. She gathered the Band-Aids and peroxide, and as an afterthought, took the ace bandage for her wrist as well, dumping all the supplies on the circular kitchen table. She sat down heavily with a sigh in one of the chairs and started to open the peroxide when she heard 2 quick knocks on the back door, then a key disengaging the lock. She smiled at the sound. "Hey, Alan," she said as the back door opened and her lanky neighbor entered. "Hey, T-Bird, how's it going?" "What happened?" Alan dropped the keys on the table and immediately turned to the freezer for an ice pack. He crossed the kitchen quickly and put the ice on her face, then examined her knee and her wrist. Alan and Tori had been friends since they'd been in diapers. They'd lived next door to one another their whole lives, and for a while they had been each other's whole world. When Tori's dad left, Alan was there for Tori, and when Alan's mom got sick, Tori went to the hospital with him. When Tori didn't think she had the strength to leave Bo, Alan gave her the tough love her mother was unable to give her. They'd never tried to date. The fact was, she and Alan were so close the thought was weird to them. It wasn't that Alan wasn't handsome with his tall, slender build, warm brown eyes, and sandy blonde hair that always seemed to fall perfectly into place no matter what he did. He was handsome. But they had always needed each other as friends more than they had needed each other as lovers. So they became the siblings they had never had, and often the only family either one of them ever had. Alan's dad had never been around, and after his mom finally succumbed to the cancer, he was alone. Tori's mom kept her mind and life busy to avoid feeling the loss of her husband, Tori's father, after he left with another woman. Tori's father had died a few years later of liver failure, leaving her truly alone. "Spill it, T. What happened?" "Bo stopped me on the way home." "What? What about the restraining order?" Alan yelled, nearly knocking the chair over as he jumped to his feet. "The restraining order expired this morning." "Will you sit down, please? I hate it when you get all stressy." Tori flipped her hand at him after fuming a few more seconds. He sat down. "Thank you," she sighed. "Okay, so then what happened?" Alan said coolly. "Bull pulled up in that stupid truck of his. He wanted to give me a ride or something. I wouldn't get in the car, and he got mad, so I ran. I tripped down the street, and he was right on top of me, and then he hit me." Tori looked down at the table. She felt so feeble and embarrassed. She was so sick of being afraid. Alan was fuming inside, but he spoke calmly to her. "T-Bird, it's not your fault. That jerk has the problem, not you." He reached across the table and put a hand on her forearm. "Did you call the cops?" "Yeah, after..." Tori blushed and smiled despite herself. "After what? What could possibly be funny?" "Not funny." Tori tried to find the right words. "Sweet." Alan stared at her blankly for several seconds. "And this is why I'm single. I don't get girls. Alan threw his hands up in exasperation. Tori laughed at his reaction. Seriously, T, the guy hits you and it's sweet? No, not Bo. Tori waved her hands in front of her, clearing the confusion. This guy, this totally gorgeous guy, came out of nowhere and beat the shit out of Bo. What? Alan shook his head. Do you have a concussion? No, listen. This guy happened to be driving by and saw Bo attack me, and he saved me. She smiled and thought about the events for a moment, then took the peroxide off the table and poured it on a nearby dishcloth and began cleaning her bleeding knee. He's down the street where it happened, getting my bag right now. Tori flinched at the stinging in her knee. Alan was quiet a minute. Is this guy okay? He finally asked. Alan, Tori started. No, listen, Tori, your taste in men is... he was obviously searching for the right words. It sucks. Your taste in men sucks, T-Bird. This guy could be another Bo. You know nothing about him. I know he isn't Bo. Tori motioned to the front windows where she could see the front windows and the black trailblazer pulling back into the driveway. Go see for yourself. Alan stood and walked to the doorway between the two rooms and watched the black vehicle park. They both waited for the knock at the door. When it came, Tori moved to answer the door. Alan rushed into the living room. No, please let me. He smiled. Tori laughed and sat back down. What's his name again? Lancelot? Galahad? Ha ha ha, very funny, Tori said. Alan answered the door and said nothing. An awkward tension started to build. Hey, is Tori here? Dean's voice carried to the kitchen, causing butterflies to flutter through Tori's stomach. Yeah? Alan was laying on his protective bravado thick. And? I have her bag. Is this the right house? Is she here? Dean didn't seem daunted at all, just confused. Who are you? Don't worry about who I am. Tori began chewing her nails. Then Alan laughed. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I'm Alan, Lancelot. Come on in. The boys walked in, Alan smiling from the torture he'd put Tori through. When Dean entered the kitchen, Tori suddenly became very aware of how she looked and how out of place Dean looked in her house. Oh my goodness, he's in my house, Tori thought. Hey, how's the cheek? He cringed as he looked down at her leg and the knee. Bruised and bloodied, Tori smiled as she went back to cleaning her knee. Here's your bag, he said gently, setting it down on the floor next to the chair. He rounded the table to the chair closest to Tori and carefully took the towel from her. You can't wipe at it. Dab it. You'll make it worse. Dean gently cleaned out her knee, then bandaged the wound for her. When he was finished, Tori exhaled, not realizing she had been holding her breath. So, Hero, what's your name? Or should I just keep calling you Lancelot? Alan joked. Dean smiled pleasantly, obviously not threatened by Alan. Dean Cordia. And you are her brother? Alan waved his hand and sat down across from Tori at the table. Close enough. I live next door. Our moms were friends when we were growing up. His mom was awesome when my dad left. Tori filled in, putting the ice pack back to her face. I'm sorry, Dean said genuinely. Thanks, it's okay. I hear he was a jerk. Tori laughed. She watched Dean carefully. His cheeks were seated high amidst his olive skin. His eyes held none of the dark, angry shadows that she used to see in Bo's eyes. Dean caught her staring, and she instantly looked away, face burning with embarrassment. Okay, well, it's getting a little too whatever this is for me. Alan stood and kissed Tori on the head. See you tonight, T-Bird. What's tonight? Dean asked. There's a meteor shower tonight. It's supposed to be amazing. Alan and I were going to order bad food and watch the stars fall. Tori looked up and at Alan, begging with her eyes to invite her rescuer. Alan sighed. Yeah, come by, Alan said. I'm ordering pizza at 8. Alan opened the door but stopped halfway out and turned back to Tori. Hey, if Bo comes back, you call me. They might not hold him. Tori threw a thumbs up over her shoulder as Alan shut and relocked the back door. So you guys are close, huh? Dean asked. Yeah, he's my best friend. His mom died a couple years ago, and now I'm really all he has. What about your family? Well, we were the most normal family I knew about until Danielle. He was quiet for a moment. Now we're as normal as we can be. They stared at each other for a few minutes in silence. When Dean finally rose, he said, I gotta get home, but can I take you up on that offer? Pizza and stargazing? Tori almost leapt out of her seat. Absolutely. She may not have said a little too enthusiastically. She cleared her throat. Yeah, sounds great. It's fine. I'll be here. Dean leaned in and kissed her gently on her right cheek. Heat radiated through her body and goosebumps rippled down her arms. Dean turned and left Tori sitting in her kitchen, bandaged knee, blackened eye, and high as a kite. So that was chapter 1. I'm going to stop here since I have a whining dog at my feet and children playing loudly in the back room. But I will put in the description a link to where to buy the book, and I will read another chapter tomorrow. Thanks!